The first definition is the fluid mechanics is the study of forces and flow within fluids.
में जो क्या
And
है
the another definition
उसमें
which
ताकत
says
है
that it is a
और
branch of physics
उसका अध्ययन को हम क्या
that
बोलते हैं
deals with the mechanics of fluid. That may be a liquid, gases, plasma, and the forces on
मैकेनिक के बारे
them.
में पढ़ते हैं जैसे
There is another definition. It is the study of a fluid behavior, liquid, gases, that may be a blood, and plasma at rest and in motion. Particularly the forces they produce. And one more definition that I am quoting here. Fluid mechanics is the study of fluids at rest and at motion, and can be divided into two main categories, which are static fluid mechanics and dynamic fluid mechanics. Overall, the basic thing behind the concept is fluid mechanics is the study of fluids at rest and at motion. And also, this fluid mechanics science is divided into two branches. The first one is the fluid statics. And what is this fluid statics? Fluid statics simply deals with the fluid at rest position. And the another branch of fluid mechanics is the fluid dynamics. And as you can easily interpret by its name itself, it deals with the fluid in motion. So these are the actually two branches of fluid mechanic science. So let us discuss what is fluid statics, what is fluid dynamics, and what are its application, especially in the field of pharmacy. Fluid statics is also known as hydrostatics. And since in this science the fluid is in rest position, so in the fluid statics there is no shear stress because the liquid is in rest position, or we can say the fluid is in stable equilibrium position, and that's why there will be no shear stress involved here. So what we are studying here? We are actually studying here any force that is developed due to its pressure. And
the one skill that can help you achieve freedom in a digital world is recording videos like this and becoming
so in the case of fluid statics, any force developed will be only due to the pressure of the liquid, because the liquid is in static position, that is in the stable equilibrium, and therefore measuring a pressure variation, this is simply due to the weight of any liquid or fluid. In simple words, in fluid statics, we are studying the nature of pressure exerting by fluid and variation of pressures at different levels when the net flow rate is zero. Since we have already discussed here, in the case of fluid statics, fluid is in rest position, and that's why the net flow rate, overall the flow rate will be zero. And in this case, whatever be the variation of pressure at the different levels, and The fluid that is exerting pressure in the vessel or any kind of thing in the static position, all this kind of science is related to the fluid statics. Fluid statics science explains many phenomena of the daily life. Fluid static science is used for the determining the pressure differences at the different level of atmosphere. We are assuming our atmosphere or the air in a static or in a rest position. If we assume this, by using the principles of fluid statics, we can determine the pressure differences at the different level of atmosphere. In the development of the pressure measuring device, and the same thing is here also, while utilizing the pressure measuring devices, we have to understand the concept of fluid statics. If we know the basic principles and the concept of the fluid statics well, we can utilize it for the development of the pressure measuring devices. And the next application part is the calculation of the force by water over dams, and this is also one of its application, because in the case of dams we can assume a water is in the static condition, and that's why to understand the whatever be the force exerting by the water over the dams, we have to use the principles of the fluid statics. And another thing, understanding the force exerting by any liquid in different parts of the fermenter during the fermentation process, and this part is particularly useful for the pharmacy students, and because we are preparing many drugs by using the fermentation techniques, understand the fluid statics principles, we can understand the force exerting by any liquid that is present in the fermenter during the fermentation process, and this is another application as far as, and very important as far as pharmacy students point of view. Now, the force of liquids over submerged ships or oceans. We can easily assume that the objects that are submerged inside the ocean and the fluid over it, or in this case it is water. The water over it is in a static position, and to understand what kind of force that water is exerting over any submerged object, we have to again understand the basic principles of the fluid statics. If we are dealing with the pressure measuring devices, for example, barometer, manometers, gauzes, actually we are dealing with the principles of the fluid statics. And also in the case of a pharmacy, imagine that if we have to understand the concept of any drug floating over any liquid, we need a explanation why or how any drug floats over the water, because we have such kind of formulations which floats over the water. For example, the floating tablets are there in the market. So if we want to understand the basic concept or the principle behind the development of such kind of formulation, or we want to develop such kind of formulation, again we have to understand the fluid statics concept. Now let us understand the fluid dynamics also. Now the fluid dynamics that we have already discussed is related to the motion of fluids, and it is generally classified into two types. First is aerodynamics, and this is actually the general classification. The first one is the aerodynamics. By name itself, you can easily understand what kind of science it is. This is actually related to the motion of air and gases. And the another classification is the hydrodynamics, and which is related to the motion of liquids. Now, this fluid dynamics is particularly important to study liquids, gels, ointments, or any kind of liquid which changes its flow properties under the different stress conditions. So if we want to understand the flow properties of any such kind of liquid, again, we have to understand the fundamental principle that is related to the fluid dynamics. And the another thing, it is important in the manufacture of liquid formulation. And why it is so? Because the pharmaceutical industries are dealing with a very large amount of fluids. So if there is a small increase in the efficiency of any process, suppose if we have optimized any particular condition, for example, in the case of mixing, assume that we are actually mixing any two different liquids. So if there are two different liquids are mixed together and we have optimized the conditions properly, then that means we have ultimately decreased the product cost, because in that case the energy requirement will reduced, and the energy requirement reduced, that means certainly there is a decrease in the cost of our product, and that means that overall the net increase in the efficiency of the process. So this is the another very important example, especially for the pharmacy students. And for example, mixing we have already discussed. There are many other unit operations, for example, drying. Similarly, fluid transportation. There may be certainly the fluid is in moving position. To understand the fluid behavior during its transportation, again we have to go through the concept of related to the fluid dynamics. Packaging, of course, during packaging, many times we have to flow the liquid through pipes, and after that it is packed into its respective containers, and that's why again we have to utilize the concept of fluid dynamics. The optimization of the process. To optimize this kind of process ultimately will definitely increase in the efficiency, and which will further resulting a large decrease in the product cost. So these are the few very important applications related to the pharmacy. Now overall the energy requirements are reduced if we optimize the process, and that will ultimately again decrease the production cost and ultimately increase the efficiency of the process. Now, understanding the conversion of energy, since we know that the flowing fluid converts some part of energy into heat, and that is because of the friction. And of course, to understand the generation of heat that is caused due to the friction by any flowing fluid, we have to understand the fluid dynamic first. So this is the another application part of this concept. So if we are studying a Bernoulli's theorem, Bernoulli's principle, laminar or turbulent flow, that is the Reynolds number, the flow of fluid through pipes, these all are the part of fluid dynamics. Now these are the references. So thank you friends.
अगर आपको हमारी वीडियो पसंद आई हो तो इसे लाइक करें और ज्यादा से ज्यादा शेयर करें ताकि बाकी लोगों तक भी ये जानकारी पहुंच सके। हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करना बिल्कुल ना भूलें और हमारी वीडियोस को सबसे पहले देखने के लिए बेल आइकन को भी जरूर प्रेस करें।